Last year I really played around with the timing of starting my seeds and even planting out. And what I realized is we're planting way too late and we're starting our seeds way too late. It's a mixed bag. Seed starting is definitely something that can be confusing and there's a lot of steps to it, but you can see we start a lot of seeds. We do all that and then we come in here and we started these broccoli seeds the other day. Let's check on these real quick. So we are got full germination. Look at that, look how easy it is to push that up. And then I can push it out of the way. That perlite's great. So yeah, we got full germination here. But the reason why I bring you in here to look at these seedlings is because, I mean, we're talking about seed starting and we're doing this whole series, but we start our seeds too late. As a community of gardeners and homesteaders, especially in the beginning, it kind of flops a little bit. Like in the beginning, we're really concerned about having our seeds, we really want them early, right? We want to get started early, we want to grow earlier and all that good stuff. And then we start to get a little nervous and we may pull back. But we got to understand our plants, right? We got to understand the seeds that we're growing. So I played around with this a lot last year and I really want to show you guys, or I can't show you because obviously that was last year, but kind of go over what we did differently and how well it worked for us. This is my most shady bed in the garden, right? This is, from what I have now, this is the most shady garden bed, and we planted broccoli in mid-January and we still had 3 months of frost left and we got a 100% harvest and didn't cover them a single time. And then we come over here in this bed where the Brussels sprouts are now, and we planted our potatoes around February 1st and we got a huge harvest. We got a full basket out of this one bed. Planted my potatoes so early last year that I had to go to the store and the guy told me, he was like, we're not putting our potatoes out for another month. They already had them. And I was like, man, I really need them. It's time to plant them. And he went and dug in the container and brought me bags of potatoes that I could grow. And I was able to get them in and get them set up in time. So we did that, and we still had, at that point when we planted our potatoes, we still had roughly 2 to 2.5 months worth of frost chances and frost left and cold freezing temperatures left until, you know, it was all said and clear. The question becomes, why did I plant so early last year? What drove me to do that? Well, a couple things. One, the broccoli that we put over here was, you know, we typically have to fight the heat in the spring and usually they bolt. So we wanted to get an earlier start and that absolutely happened. And then for the potatoes over here, the other thing was we wanted to try and get them out at a better time than we had before because we wanted to plant behind them. And we wanted to make sure that we got a full harvest because what we know is they are also sensitive to heat too. Once they get into the flower, or not the flowering stage, but the harvesting stage, once it gets too hot, they'll flop over and die. And so we were losing a lot of our battles as far as like how much harvest we can get. So we went to the drawing board and we started looking at it, and you know, these crops are frost hardy. They can take a cold. So we wanted to take advantage of that, and we wanted to make sure that, hey, look, if you like cold, I'm gonna give you cold. So we did that, and it worked out really well. And so over the past, I'd say 5 years roughly, I've started my seeds earlier and earlier and earlier to the point now where we're looking at, in the same calendar year, we're going to be starting our spring crop. So in 2024, we'll be starting crops for 2025, and our seed starting season has expanded from where it used to be like 2 to 3 months. Now we're going 5-6 months worth of seed starting. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's how we handle it because we want to ensure that we have enough to grow. But we also don't want to waste our time. The timing for this is everything. So we want to make sure that we get everything going in the garden at the right time so that we can maximize our harvest and all of our effort is well rewarded. The issue that it's brought along is it's brought along the fact that we don't really have a lot of time for our gardens to rest Now this year is a little bit different for me personally because I'm in the process of moving these beds over here, so I'm short a couple beds, which if we had those and they were all ready to go and everything and they were in place, we would factor that in and we would be leaving some beds resting so that when it comes time to plant, we can get and do so and have fresh beds and not really have overworked soil. So we're going to be a little bit of a disadvantage this year, but we're already planning for that. We're going to be topping off with soil and nutrients, and we're trying to get things going in the right direction so we can harvest them at the right time. Because that's the other aspect. Going into fall, we've always had issues as far as plants just not getting to a harvestable size in time for the real cold to set in. When it comes to a spring and a fall garden and stuff like that, it's so important to remember that these crops really do well in the cold and cool weather, and we should really be focusing on that. But you've got to catch it at the right time, so we've got to plan it out proportionally. So if it likes the cold weather, doesn't mean you wait until it's cold to put it in the ground. You have to get it in earlier so that it can get used to it, and then as it starts to cool off, it will continue to do so, and it will continue to catch up and grow appropriately. And so that's what we're trying to do. Last year we did our broccoli in around mid-January, and I'm going to do the same thing. Basically, my weather at that time, because I'm in coastal North Carolina, which, by the way, welcome to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I'm in coastal North Carolina. If you're farther north of me, then you need to adjust. But the reason why I'm going to tell you my weather is because it's important to understand what temperatures I'm looking at. So for me, I'm looking at temperatures right around, I'm looking for a warm stretch that we can get. And at some point, no matter where you are, you're going to get a warm stretch. You're going to get something that's going to be, a low above 28 for a period of time. And if you can get that at first, then you can put these plants in with no protection, and especially if you're warming up during the day. And if you are getting it and you're not getting those temperatures and it stays cool, you can put them out under protection, and then you can build on it. But you want to have a little bit of a sweet spot right in the beginning so the plants can get in the ground, it can be comfortable. You don't want to be out here chipping ice away or anything like that, but you definitely want to try and be ahead of the game and stay on top of it. And so that's what we did. Now, we didn't even have to cover this broccoli last year in this bed at all. We were prepared to, but we didn't. And the potatoes, I think we may have covered them one night, but what we have to understand, like with our potatoes, for instance, they're not really sensitive until the greens come up. Well, it's a little bit of time before the greens come up. So you get them in the ground, they set their roots, then they start to come up, and then you need to start being a little bit concerned. But this is part of it. This is how we can extend our gardening season dramatically. You guys look at my garden, you can see it's planted, things are going well. I drive around and I look at gardens everywhere I go, and I don't see a single garden in my area this time of year that is planted quite like this. I will see like a row of collards or something, but I don't see anything like this. Now in the spring we'll come out and I'll be harvesting my crops and I'll see people just putting them in, meaning they're behind schedule. So it's understanding what these plants can do that can really push you to the next level and really up your production in a small space, where we're turning food out of here in this small garden at a much higher pace and much faster than a lot of people with bigger gardens, because we're intensively planting and we're taking full advantage of the season. I mean, if you come over here and we look at these cabbages, they're a little bit behind schedule, but they're growing. We're starting to get some heads going. I mean, this one's starting to head up, and this one, we haven't had our first frost, and we're not really supposed to get one yet. We're going to get really close, and it's going to start to get cool, but it's not quite there. So we can take advantage of that and have all of these plants are ready to go. At this point, they're building, they're getting to the stage they want to be in. We don't have as much growth on these as we would like, but at the same time, we've got growth and we've got plants in the ground that are ready. So we were well prepared for that. People garden because, you may do it for a hobby. You may do it because you just enjoy it. And then some people like myself grow it for, like, what if there was no food? What if we had nothing? You know, I said did a live last week, and we were talking, and as we were closing out, I was saying a garden equals freedom. It's freedom from the food system. It's freedom that you can pick and choose what you eat and consume in the way you want it, in the way however you want it treated, however you want to grow it, you can handle that. And that's why I do it. So if that situation were to occur, we've got food planted already. We're good to go because we figured out that we can plant a little bit earlier and it doesn't really affect it too much. So there's all these different ways to look at it, but as a community, as a whole, I feel like we're a little too nervous to plant things out at the appropriate time. And a lot of the problem is because when you go to buy transplants and stuff, when they put out transplants at the stores, we already have the crops ready to go, and most of the time in the garden by the time they give us options to buy transplants at the stores. So we're already set by design. They are kind of telling us like, hey, don't plant yet, it's not time, when in fact, it's past time to get the plants in the ground. We want to be clear, this conversation is for cool season crops only. As far as like your warm season, like tomatoes, peppers, melons, okra, all that stuff, eggplants, sweet potatoes, corn, all that good stuff, we should probably be starting our seeds earlier, but I always hesitate to rush to get them in the ground because you can really come into some major issues with that. So what I like to say is give the cool season garden its time. Give it its time to shine and grow and enjoy it, and then move on out. Another benefit, which I kind of hinted to earlier, is when we plant earlier, not only are we going to get higher harvest, but at the same time, you're going to get those crops out of here earlier so you can go back and put something in its place. So here's a combination that I like to do in my garden. The way this bed ended up working is we put potatoes in it, and then we put them in February, and then we took them out in June. We would come back and we'd put buckwheat in this spot for a cover crop. We'd grow it until about July, end of July, pull it out. Then we would put our Brussels sprouts in, and we'd grow our Brussels sprouts. Then the next year what we'll do is then we'll put a bed of squash in, and then we can start that process over again. So that was this first year. So what do you think's going in this bed next year? Brussels sprouts or squash. So we had our potatoes and buckwheat, now it's Brussels sprouts, and then it's going to go into that. And then we can do over here. So this is starting over fresh, totally fresh. This is radishes and turnips. We'll pull those out. They'll be done hopefully in around December or January sometime. Pull those out. Potatoes will go in there, and we'll start that process over. So you can see we've got a 4-season planting plan for this one bed in itself. Not only can you do that, then you can factor that into your crop rotation. So you have a 4-season planting plan for one garden bed. Then you have it factored into a crop rotation where we're just moving it a bed each year. And then you're getting all these harvests off of it. And we even have in that time frame, we have a cover crop planted in that time frame to help revitalize the soil, help our pollinators, or really for me, help my honeybees, and then go from there. So you can see that by starting earlier, we have all of that. So the potatoes would go in, but then when we do the squash this year, so we'll put our squash out right around the middle of April. We'll get them out, but we're gonna start them inside probably the end of February to the middle of March, somewhere in that time frame. We're going to start them inside and get them going. Not only are we going to start them then, but then when we plant them out and they get comfortable and they start producing, we're going to start another crop of them so that we can chase this crop that's in there already with another crop, and then just kind of magnify that and keep it going. So we always are keeping seeds started to go into its place. I don't know about you, but if I was going into my garden and I was doing as much work as I do in mine, and as much time and as much care and harvesting and preserving and all that stuff, I want to get as much out of my garden as possible, and I want to be as absolutely efficient as I possibly can so that my garden can produce more for my family. And by starting your seeds earlier, that's exactly what you're gonna get, and you're gonna catch it at the right time. So whatever you did last year, more than likely bump it up a little bit and try it and see how it helps. And if you've done this, let us know in the comments how that's worked for you in the past.
Good.